What's going on YouTube? JR Juggernaut 1 here, and this will be my regional report for August 21st, 2011. I didn't want to wait too long to post this up, seeing as how I'm starting to pack up for school. I competed on Sunday in what was my last regional for at least another 3 to 4 months, sadly. But you know what? I want to focus more on my senior year of college. I want to just kind of be excited for that, and then because you only have so much time for college and so much more time to play Yu-Gi-Oh! So with that, it's nice to be going back. I will, however, talk about the deck that I was running. Some people probably guessed what I was running if they talk to me on YouTube. I decided to run Miracle Gemini because, in my opinion, this was one of the best decks to run. The new support that the deck got from Generation Force made the deck much more viable, and on top of that, the power to exceed summon is pretty easy in this deck, given the ability for this how easily this deck can just get out level 4 monsters. So I decided to stick with that, but I decided to stick with Miracle Gemini specifically because I honestly thought a more controlled build would be better than sticking with a more explosive build. I wanted a deck that could be both aggressive while also controlling the pace of the deck. I knew if I focused simply on the aggressive and more forceful aspects of the deck, it wasn't going to work because I knew I'd probably be outsped by decks such as Tour Guide Tengu Synchro, or Tour Guide Plants, whatever you want to call it. But sadly, I ended up going 4-4. I'm not sure what to exactly blame for my less than stellar performance at that regional, but I do definitely think part of it was my own misplaying, some of the mistakes I made throughout the day. Another was also the fact that my deck just had some problems with it that I really should have fixed. But you know what? You live and learn from these, so I'll go through the deck now. Also, Cordero, if you're watching this, your tokens did not give me enough luck, so I'm just kidding. But yeah, so here's the deck list. I'm gonna kind of just do it this WK Dad style. We got 1 Stratos, 3 Alias, 1 Ocean, 2 Thunder Kings, oh, and sorry for the glare, 1 Evocator Chevalier, 1 DD Warrior Lady, 1 Honest, 1 Grand Mole, 1 Cyber Dragon, and 1 Effect Veiler, 13 monsters. For the spells, we have 3 Gemini Spark, 2 Mystical Space Typhoons, 2 Miracle Fusions, 2 Proxy Pot of Dualities, 1 Rhoda, 1 E-Call, 1 Fusion Gate, 1 Dark Hole, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Book of Moon. I believe that's 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 spells. And for traps, we have 2 Bottomless, 1 Mirror Force, 1 Torrential, 1 Hero Blast, 1 Warning, it should be 2, but what can you do? 1 Judgment, 1 Compulse, 1 7 Tools, 1 Fiendish Chain, 1 Bribe, 1 Oppression. So, let me just go through some of the main deck briefly so I could explain a few things. The E-Hero lineup is pretty standard. Ocean is actually a very good card when you're running a lot of back row. It lets you just recycle your monsters, and it's very good when you have like some of the pieces in your hand, but you don't have a way of using them. Like if you draw a Gemini Spark, but when you already have Alias in the grave, this is a great way to get it back out if you don't have like Rhoda or E-Call or something. 2 Thunder King. I decided to run 2 as opposed to 3 mainly because of the fact that you're running a bit of search cards, and this card can hurt you if you don't if you play it at the wrong time. So usually you're just going to use your search cards like these guys immediately and then get out Thunder King, so just because it's more effective. The Chevalier was just another target for Gemini Spark, and it gives you the possibilities of Nova Master, which I made on numerous occasions throughout the day. Warrior Lady because and it's also searchable through Rhoda if you're really desperate. Same with DD Warrior Lady, but it also just kind of serves a different purpose because it's great against a bunch of different decks such as Plants and Teechees. Honest and Grand Mole Honest is pretty straightforward. Grand Mole was just kind of to deal with the XCs monsters and the Synchro monsters. Cyber Dragon because if I knew Catastor is a big problem for this deck, wanted to be able to deal with it, and Effect Veiler because it's just a very good card. But I didn't want to run 2 because it's just by itself, it doesn't do all that much for you, since you aren't going to really be doing any synchro summoning in the deck. 1 just seemed more appropriate. Gemini Spark. This card is honestly one of my favorite cards in the entire deck. It's an amazing +1. Your opponent is forced to play conservatively when you play the alias, because they know that if they try to remove it, I may have the Spark in hand as a response, and it's really good when it works. Double Miracle's obvious as opposed to 3, because 3 can get a little cloggy, and this is more of an anti-meta deck in a sense, as opposed to an explosive deck. I've had 2 dualities that I borrowed from people because I wasn't going to buy them, because I'm just planning to get them in the tins. Honestly, I should have bumped this up to 3, because I was originally running 1 Rhoda and 2 Ecall, but the problem with Ecall was with only 5 targets. It can be dead at times, so 1 of each is good, but 3 duality would have just been much better as opposed to 2. I didn't want to resort to getting a 3rd duality, and I honestly thought 2 would be better, but sadly I was mistaken. Fusion Gate. This is a card that everyone was questioning, but it's honestly really good. It makes it easier to go for Shining when you really want to go for it and get the advantage, and also the fact that the monsters you summon cannot be warning. Depression will work, but they can't use warning, which is obviously very helpful given how popular a card that is. Also, this was a great card to have against Gravekeepers, which are a bad matchup for this deck, obviously, or a fairly bad matchup. The staples are here. Let's move on to traps. This is probably where the deck had its biggest problems, because the trap lineup was where I had the most flaws, I would think. The 2 bottomless was definitely good. Even though you side it out at times, this deck's biggest problem is big monsters, so you need to have the bottomlesses in there to deal with that. Mirror Force and Torrential, obvious. I was almost not going to run this card, because, you know, I didn't like how it doesn't seem to give you much advantage, but realizing when you run a low monster count, this card is very good. Very, very good. Hero Blast is just broken, it's a +1, but when I was playing this, I realized I should have been playing Future Fusion as a spell, as opposed to like certain other cards, because Future Fusion is really good, and it makes your Hero Blast live when you have it in hand. It's just so good. The Compulse was an interesting tech choice of mine. I just wanted to be able to lock my opponents down more easily, and this card was just great against Synchros and XYZ monsters the entire day, so I was happy that I used it. The 7 tools was also sort of a tech choice. I didn't want to run 2 though, because I didn't want to focus more on the trap destruction aspect, but I thought this would just be good as just to have it, because there are times where it's really useful, and it came in handy throughout the day, so I was happy. The last 3 cards though, where this deck really is just these cards should not have been in the deck at all. I gave in a peer pressure playing these 2 cards, but this one was my own choice, and I should not have played any of these, to be honest with you. Let me explain. Fiendish Chain is a great card to lock your opponent's monsters, like just to make them useless. However, the main problem with it is that the reason it works well in decks like Plants is because they have a much easier time getting over the monster the following turn, because they'll normally just synchro summon, or they'll just have a way of dealing with it. This deck, not so much. You have to really hope you either have a fusion monster or some kind of just not a fusion monster, but a fusion card. Otherwise, or Gemini Spark, I guess. Otherwise, you're just kind of screwed. There's not much you can do with a monster in that sense. Oppression I thought would be great, because I thought it would lock my opponents down more than it would hurt me. But really, the card's just not that helpful. It can hurt you when you activate it, and the only time it did hurt me, it still made me realize I shouldn't have been playing it. If I could go back, I probably would have taken 3 of these. I would have taken out all 3 of these cards. I would have put in a Future Fusion, a 3rd Pot of Duality, and I'm trying to remember what the other card I was going to put in was. Oh yeah, and a Second Warning up. If I didn't have the Second Warning, I don't know what I would play instead. But regardless, I would have done something differently. So I want to talk about the side deck quickly. So the side deck, I had 2 Super Poly, 1 effect, the second Effect Veil and the second Cyber Dragon, a second Fusion Gate, Twister, Forbidden Lance, and then the very anti-meta-ish aspect of the side deck, where you kind of just slow the deck down a bit, and the idea is to just really control your opponent. 2 Deep Prisons, 2 King Tigers, 2 Skill Drains, and 2 Banisher of the Radiance. Some of these cards are rather obvious. The 2 Super Poly are just staples in this type of side deck. The second Effect Veiler was just to deal with effect-heavy decks. Like I wouldn't necessarily side it in against every matchup. I would side in Skill Drain, but it's just if there was something I was particularly worried about, I'd want to keep this. I want to side this in. Cyber Dragon, it was just same. Like if I'm facing something like Black Wings, where they have a lot of beaters, or of course if I'm facing against a deck that runs a lot of machines. Like I played Morphtronics once, and I sided this one in because drawing this card is amazing against them. The second Fusion Gate was mainly for Gravekeepers, but if I found I wanted to up the explosiveness of the deck, I would side this in. Twister was mainly for Gravekeepers as well, but if I found a deck siding in a card that was particularly harmful to this deck, which didn't really happen, then I would side it in. I think this was the only card I never sided in throughout the day. The Forbidden Lance was just kind of an extra protective card, mainly for TGs, but I found there's just a bunch of different decks you could play this against and it would work. But I think I only side this in against Gravekeepers. The stun, this is just traditional stuff. The Deep Prisons are just for decks like Gravekeepers and TGs, where you want to remove their monsters as opposed to letting them just go to the grave. King Tigers are for locking decks like Frogs and such down. Skill Drain mainly for effect-heavy decks, since your deck is kind of okay when the effects are negated. And 2 Banishers just for the sake of removing your monsters. This card put in a lot of work, and I was surprised. Honestly, if Parallel World Fusion was out, I probably would have sided the third one, put 2 Defissures in the side deck, and then sided the 2 to 3 Parallel World Fusions. Because that card makes the removal so much better, because it allows you to use those cards so much better. But since it's not out, I had to resort to just using the Banishers. Overall, it was a pretty good side deck. I don't know if there's anything I would have necessarily changed. Maybe I would have taken out the Twister and the Forbidden Lance, but everything else just kind of worked in its own way. These 8 cards I definitely wouldn't have changed, though. They were so good, honestly. Just because the Banisher and King Tiger, they can just lock down decks so easily, and I love that part of it. And last but not least, I want to talk about the extra deck, because this was something that I was not expecting at all. So for the extra deck, I had 2 Elemental Hero Nova Masters, 2 Elemental Hero Absolute Zeros, 2 Elemental Hero The Shinings, 2 Chimera Tech Fortress Dragons, 1 Elemental Hero Gaia. I had to buy this, sadly. I was hoping I could just borrow it, but, it's just what happens. 1 Vision Hero Adoration. I wasn't even going to use this card, but what ended up happening was I pulled this in a pack, in a pack opening. Like, I topped at one of my locals last Friday. I got 4 packs, and in them I pulled this and a second Nova Master. So I just used both of these, and then I decided to use this. But the only real use I had for it was just like, I thought, I could use it with Fusion Gate if I'm really desperate. But it's more like if they were playing a Destiny Hero deck, I could use Super Poly with them, and yeah, something like that. 1 Draconite, you have to play this card because, Super Poly, take their Stardust, etc. I ran 2 Synchros, Catastor, and Trishula, because they're honestly the easiest ones you can get out in this deck, because you go Veiler and one of your level 4s, but I never made either of them because they just it just wasn't necessary at any point. And then I ran 2 Xyzes, 1 Utopia, and, just because level 4s, it's big beater, easy. The last one, to my shock, a Steel Swarm Roach. Now, for those of you wondering, yes, this is mine. Shockingly, I managed to pull this thing while I was at the regional in the 5 packs that I got. I opened this in complete shock and immediately decided to run this card as opposed to a second Utopia. Boy, was it a weird day. But to be perfectly honest with you, I did not like this card at all in the extra deck. If I could go back, I would probably run a second Utopia instead. This card could have been handy, but I just found no use for it at all, because most of the decks I was playing, I just didn't feel like it was worth it to bring this out as opposed to keeping my 2 monsters. It was really bizarre. just, you know, with Exceed Summoning being popular, that's also annoying. There's just not much this thing can do to help you. It's not Thunder King, for example. Thunder King's just much better, in my opinion. This card is hyped. I think it's going to drop in value eventually, but I'm getting rid of it regardless. I don't feel like I need it. So yeah, guys, that's the deck. Sorry had to be so long. I'm going to leave in the bottom a list of my matches and how they went, just so you guys can get a sense of what happened. In terms of content, I'm going to be talking more about like the next format. But for the most part, I'm just going to kind of be saying like, okay, I'm just going to kind of talk about what's going to happen with my plans since I'm going back to college. You know, I'm just going to not be making as many videos. I'm going to kind of be thinking about what kind of hero deck I'm going to run next format. But it's like that's far away from now. You know, I'm just going to kind of focus on my work since I'm getting ready to take the LSATs, and I'm not going to really be playing any Yu-Gi-Oh until I guess Thanksgiving. We'll just see what happens. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out.